This hour is brought to you by BattleBox. Named the best men's subscription box in 2019. BattleBox sends you new hand-picked gear every month. Perfect for all adventure seekers, outdoor enthusiasts, and survivalists. Get 20% off your order. Go to BattleBox.com and use code word Jesse.
Hey, Slider Crusaders, welcome to our special Exposed, the Real Kamala Harris. We're going to take some time to talk about the vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, former DA of San Francisco, Attorney General for California, and now U.S. Senator for California. We'll talk about some of the policies that she's fought for in the past. We can see, actually, how she's acted in a leadership position. She's been in executive positions in California. So we're going to talk about her truancy enforcement while she was Attorney General in San Francisco, or excuse me, District Attorney. We'll talk about her relationship with Planned Parenthood over the years, and then cap it off with a bunch of just quick overviews of a bunch of different similar issues that she's dealt with over the years here. There's a common theme, though, that you'll see, and I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago with David Arsani, actually. He mentioned her ambition. Now, what's interesting about this is the day before, I think it was even a couple hours before she was announced as Biden's pick, this group came out. They're called We Have Her Back. And they listed out a bunch of things that you can't say, right? It was a how-to guide for people in the media on how to avoid being sexist and racist. And it was a list of things you can't do. So you can't talk about her likability. You can't talk about her looks, her weight, style of dress, tone of voice, her relationship with her staff or past partners. You can't mention racist tropes that suggest unfairly that women are too emotional in positions of leadership, which is a weird thing that they wrote, racist trope, that women are too emotional. Like, wouldn't that be a sexist trope, not a racist trope? But everything's racist now, so even sexism is racist. But the very first thing that this group said, and they didn't mention Kamala Harris because it wasn't announced that Kamala Harris was the president. But the very first thing they said was, you cannot talk about her ambition. Now, they probably knew that it was going to be Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris is ambitious. What they're really trying to say is you can't talk about her relationship with the former mayor of San Francisco and state assembly speaker at the time, Willie Brown, who he put her on a bunch of boards to get her career started. And when I say relationship, I mean relationship. He was 60, she was 29. So you can't mention that because that's ambitious. That was her ambition doing the work. So you can't talk about that. But I want to talk about ambition here for a minute. I don't know, when you think ambition, do you think it has a positive connotation? I don't know, maybe there's a split on that. I don't know. I just want to make real quick the argument that it's not a great thing. I guess it depends, like most things. It depends who is it for, who is it to glorify, you or God. But Thomas Brooks, he was a Puritan preacher a long time ago, he said, ambition is a gilded misery, a secret poison, a hidden plague, the engineer of deceit, and the mother of hypocrisy. Ambition will cause you to compromise your principles if you ever have it in the first place. And you'll do whatever it takes to get ahead and get to the top, no matter what you got to do, no matter what you got to say to get there. And I think maybe an example of that would be her debate performance, where she called Biden or insinuated that Biden is a racist because of his busing policies from the 70s. Remember the whole, that little girl was me, right? So she just eviscerated Biden. And then just a couple days ago, she was on the Colbert Show, and Colbert was like, how can you say he's a racist and now be his whatever? And she said, it was a debate, and then laughed it off. That was it. What that means is, I mean, I'll say whatever. It was a debate. I'll do whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter what I say or if I believe it or whatever. It was a debate. It was a debate. Colbert, it was a debate. So she kept saying over and over. Whatever it takes. So ambition comes from the Latin word ambire. It means both, which is weird. What's the connection there? Or both. It means going both ways at the same time. Being double-minded, saying one thing, believing another, pretending to be one thing, being another. It applies to the person, back then they applied it to the person who had no convictions, the person who would do anything for their selfish goals. It was used back in the day to describe Roman politicians, and it wasn't a good thing. It was the person who would take any side on any issue at any moment in order to get ahead. In Latin, it meant campaigning for a promotion. And John MacArthur, he did a sermon all about this. And he said, with the election coming up, and all that we've been overexposed to, ambitious people want power, they want position, they want social visibility, they want popularity, they want approval, they want money, they want recognition, they want authority. You should be careful of those people. Jeremiah 45:5 says, but you, are you seeking great things for yourself? Do not seek them. Or maybe she's doing it all for the people. Aren't they all? I'll end here. I only got a minute because I want to get to our guests. San Diego, our local paper here, the San Diego Union Tribune, is doing all these editorial pieces from marginalized voices. Here's the opening sentence of one just yesterday. When I heard that Senator Kamala Devi Harris would join the presumptive Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, as his running mate, I cried uncontrollably. Listen, you should never cry uncontrollably over politics. There's no reason you should be crying uncontrollably, especially when she didn't even do anything. She was just named. She didn't win or anything. But she felt a super close connection to Kamala because she too is half Indian and then her dad's from the Caribbean or something. So it's just, oh, it's like I'm nominated. It's so, white people can't do that, by the way. You can't feel that connection, right? Could you imagine if you're like, oh, I cried when Trump won because I just feel such a close connection to him. He's white, I'm white, his kids are white, my kids are white. It's like we're the same. You can't do that. Listen, this is what they print in the UT. On Martin Luther King, MLK Day, when Kamala announced her run for president, for the first time, I did not want her to run. I knew she was presidential material, but I selfishly did not want her to have to fight the dual enemy of misogyny and racism. But I put aside my fears and vowed to ride or die with my homegirl. And then she talks about the look of little brown and black girls when they saw her, blah, blah, blah. It's like super unhealthy, like codependent stuff right there. But anyway, this is the gem I wanted to share. Black women are the base of the Democratic Party. But one of, which is like I don't know if that's true, but one of the hard lessons we learned growing up is that white people cannot be trusted to do the right thing. What? You can print that in the newspaper? Like if I had such groveling praise of Trump, I'd call that out on someone. Someone said, looking at Harris, all women can wake up with a spark in their soul. Because yes, anything is possible. Her determination, resilience, courage give me and many like me hope that tomorrow will be better. Ah, it's beautiful. Let's take some time here and analyze the source of all that hope that this person has. What do you say? We'll do that next. Exposed. The real Kamala Harris. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, welcome back to our special Exposed, the real Kamala Harris. Now, when we got word, last week that Kamala Harris was the VP pick, I said, oh, I cannot wait to talk to her biggest fan and supporter, Leo Terrell. The Leo Terrell on Twitter, theleoterrell.com. You can download his podcast, everything. And is that right, Leo? I know you love Kamala.
Absolutely incorrect. Before I decided to vote for Donald Trump, I said if Kamala Harris gets selected, I would vote for a Republican. Kamala Harris is bad news, period. And I'll explain why. You fire away with the question. No way. Horrible. Horrible.
Well, it seems like you're more, I don't truly, like, most people I talk to are like, yeah, you know, she's not very exciting and whatever, but you're the most like, no, bad news that I've heard.
Let me tell you right now, I live in California. I lived in this state while she was a district attorney in San Francisco, while she was AG. I want to be very clear and very factual. Kamala Harris was a horrible prosecutor. Why? She went after little people. She went after pot smokers. She didn't go after big drug kingpins. She didn't prosecute those pedophiles in the Catholic Church. She went after little people, pot smokers. More importantly, Kamala Harris allowed a cop killer when this cop killer should have gotten the death penalty. She didn't go after that cop killer. Even Dianne Feinstein went after Kamala Harris. But let me be very clear. Kamala Harris is a disciple of a big kingpin called Willie Brown, former politician in California. Kamala Harris gives lawyers a bad name. She's not interested in country. She's not interested in party. She's interested in Kamala Harris, period. And she will say and do anything to gain power. And that's why she's in the second slot right now.
You know, right before she was announced, there was this group that came out. It was called We Have Her Back or something. And it was before her name was announced. And they gave you a list of things that you're not allowed to say about the new VP selection that could be racist or sexist or whatever. And the very first thing they said you can't say is that she's ambitious. And it sounds like that's what you just said. You're not allowed to say that, Leo.
I am a civil rights attorney for 30 years. My goal in life is to treat people equally and fairly, not to give anyone preferential treatment. I want to be clear on your program. Kamala Harris was an affirmative action pick. She wasn't picked based on her merit and skill. She was picked on her gender and her color. And to me, that is offensive as a civil rights attorney. And I'm saying it here on your program for all those naysayers saying you can't say this because she's a woman. It's wrong.
There's a thing she did when she was Attorney General, and I want to get your take on it because I think it could be I think the Trump campaign could make it a thing if they wanted to. But explain to us Kamala Harris's truancy laws and going after parents whose kids miss more than, I believe it was 5 days unexcused absence or 5 days of being 30 minutes or more late to school. Tell us about the deal with that.
Oh, absolutely. You know, she touted this when she was the Attorney General as this great law to correct child truancy laws in the state of California. In other words, she was going to put a burden on parents to make sure their kids go to school. She wasn't going to attack teacher unions. She wasn't going to talk about the poor quality of schools. So she made parents the target of the public school system by incarcerating them. Okay? She thought this was going to cure the educational problem among poor schools. No, it's school choice. But she pushed this law to jail parents. I mean, you show me the connection. Now, she backed off of that when she was running for higher office. She went on a program, I think Jake Tapper program, and said, no, that's not the intended consequences to put parents in school. Put parents in jail. It's to put kids back in school. But it was a complete failure, a total failure. And again, she distracted from her main responsibility of going after major crimes and trying to put parents in schools. Parents in jail.
Yes.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, so her claim was that it was just a little scared straight, right? Of her many speeches, this was a stump speech of her, as you know, that she would send these letterheads out to parents, and the parents would sit the kids down and say, you have to go to school because otherwise Kamala Harris is going to arrest me. Kind of like half joking, although she did arrest people. But it was just to scare the parents, to get the kids in school. They'd rather, I think the line she uses is, I'd rather the kids be in school now than in jail later. So was there any truth to the fact that she scared the parents and the kids straight?
No, it was a boogeyman letter. It was a big old phony boogeyman letter. It did not accomplish the so-called intended results. Remember, Kamala Harris tried to tout this as spending political capital to improve the educational system. That's the ultimate goal. Did her truancy law improve the educational system? No, it was a complete failure. And the PR move of scaring parents, no, she prosecuted some parents. They never went to jail. But what was the purpose of it? It did not work. It was a failure. And she backs away and walks away from it now by saying it wasn't my true intention to jail parents. But it was a failure.
Give me the story with the cop killer. I don't know that story.
Yeah. Up in San Francisco. She was the district attorney. And this citizen, if you call him a citizen, killed a cop. It was a tremendous outcry in the entire city and the state of California. She decided that she was not going to seek the death penalty. This criminal was death penalty eligible, and she refused to do so, to the dismay of everyone in the state to the police department and Senator Dianne Feinstein, who correctly said this guy deserved the death penalty, which surprised Kamala. But yes, it was a horrible crime. And what she did was she said, I'm not going to seek the death penalty. Horrible mistake. That person deserved it by killing a cop.
Yeah. Do you remember why she was against it, or is she just against it always?
No, she had a general bright line rule of she's not going to seek the death penalty, even though the state has a death penalty law. I mean, we want to discourage criminals from shooting police officers, and she failed to exercise the law. She used prosecutorial discretion. And again, to me, that's an outcry. That's an outrage because this was one of those cases that called for it.
Why do you think she won the Senate race? Right? She's been a senator for a couple terms now. I forget exactly, but how did she win that race?
I'll tell you how she won it. She won it with the blessings of, again, a man named Willie Brown. Willie Brown was a kingpin in the state of California, head of our state legislature, former mayor. He dated her. He gave her appointments. And she elevated from district attorney to attorney general to U.S. Senate. And how she won that Senate race? A lot of San Francisco, Northern California, high-tech money. Not from the average citizen, because she's not for the average citizen. She got big money from big Democratic corporations. And she won that race by beating, in my opinion, an average congressional candidate, Loretta Sanchez. So she won it.
Oh, and yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Yeah,
she won that against Loretta Sanchez.
Yeah, Loretta Sanchez. But let me tell you right now, if you really want to see how Kamala Harris is, you need to show your listeners and viewers the Tulsi Gabbard takedown of Kamala Harris during the Democratic debate. She undressed Kamala Harris and exposed her, a fellow Democrat, pointing out Kamala Harris's flaws. And Kamala Harris, again, I can't say it enough, I'm worked up over this because she's a horrible pick.
Do you think, because as you started off, you're saying, well, listen, she's a black woman, right? So that's why you just called her affirmative action pick today. Do you think she's going to make any headway for Biden with black women or black people who are women?
Let me think about it. That's a tough question. No. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why. These are facts. Kamala Harris dropped out of the presidential race 2 months before the first primary and caucus. She was running out of money. She was polling poorly. Joe Biden had more support among blacks than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris' campaign was a disaster. After she did her little 15-minute Academy Award stage, Joe, I was that little girl in the bus. She played that little race card game. She failed as a candidate for president. I want everyone to know this. The only reason why she's on the ticket, because Joe Biden gaffed 10 times when he said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. That's why I left. Then he said, all black people think alike, number 2. And then a group of so-called black leaders, if you call Puff Daddy a black leader, wrote a letter to Joe Biden saying, you better pick a black person. And so Joe Biden, already with his foot in his mouth, said, I got to pick a woman. He had no choice but to pick a black woman, a la Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris, just for the record, is part Indian and she is part Jamaican. She is not an African American. I want to make sure everyone knows that.
Because most Democrats even believe that if Biden wins, she'll be president within the next 4 years, right? And I agree too. What do you think, like ideologically, politically, what's one of her biggest things you think she would do if she were president?
Kamala Harris, first of all, will probably be president not within 4 years, probably be president within a year and a half if they won. Because if I was Joe Biden, I would sleep with my eyes open. This woman is out for his job automatically. But she's a socialist. She's flipped again. She talks about abortion on demand, ridiculous. Medicare for everyone, ridiculous. And if she's really down for people of color, then why did she oppose the bill by Tim Scott for police reform? Okay, why did she oppose that? I'll tell you why. because Tim Scott happens to be a Republican and Kamala Harris is a Democrat. And there's this mentality that only Democrats can help people of color. That is ridiculous. She's horrible.
We got to run, Leo. Who would you have picked for vice president? If you were planning on voting for Biden and you wanted to vote for Biden, but you just needed a good VP pick, who would you have chosen?
Oh, no question about Amy Klobuchar. Amy Klobuchar.
Is that right?
She would have helped. She would have helped them in the battleground states. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Amy Klobuchar, easily. Yeah. Not even.
At least she made it into the primaries. Leo, you're the man. The Leo Terrell. 2 R's, 2 L's. The Leo Terrell on Twitter, and then theleoterrell.com, and you can download Leo's podcast. Leo, good to see you, brother.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. We'll do it again. Come back with more exposed, the real Kamala Harris. We'll talk about her role with the Planned Parenthood controversy in California back in 2016, the Center for Medical Progress. We'll break that down. Coming up, Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, welcome back to our special Exposed, the real Kamala Harris. I want to go to a friend of the show, Ryan Baumberger. He is the co-founder and chief creative officer of the Radiance Foundation. Ryan, how are you, brother?
I'm feeling great. Even in this crazy, tumultuous time, I'm feeling great.
Well, I'll tell you, man, it's only going to get worse, too.
I know.
I wanted to talk to you about Kamala and Planned Parenthood and how she is like all in. Like she's a true believer on abortion and Planned Parenthood. So take us back to the Center for Medical Progress. I think everyone kind of remembers this vaguely, but tell us what this group was all about.
Center for Medical Progress, thanks to the work, excellent undercover work of David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt, we're exposing the trafficking of aborted baby body parts by Planned Parenthood. You know, they're doing the work that mainstream media refuses to do, you know, journalism. So they did this undercover investigation, which typically mainstream media praises undercover investigations, except when it's against their favorite advocacy organization. And so David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt, they exposed them. They really opened things up wide to help America understand it's not just the 300,000 plus abortions that happen at Planned Parenthood. What did they do with those supposedly unwanted babies' body parts? They then traffic them and make even more profit. And so they exposed that. They exposed the fact that they were actually profiting from it, even though Planned Parenthood denied it. In fact, Cecile Richards, who was the president of Planned Parenthood at that time, said, oh, wait, we don't profit from this. We don't profit from this, but we're going to stop taking remuneration, which their remuneration, the revenue that they were getting showed an insane amount of profit. So this was exposed, but of course it didn't sit well with those who were heavily funded by Planned Parenthood, incling Vice President Pig.
Let me stop you there before we go to the next part of the story. I just want to sit on this for a minute because it's so super important. And I hope we're like jogging memories here, these undercover videos. And you're so right. Like undercover video, that's like the pinnacle of journalism. That's like the best type of journalism you can have. And this was first class. Remember these videos came out and they were shocking and horrifying and disgusting and all the rest. But I remember the claim was, remember it was like, oh, they're just edited. They're highly edited and cut. And then he's like, oh, here's the whole video.
Right. Isn't all news highly edited? That's what news is, highly edited.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And it was all right there. Was there anything in particular that you remember from these videos? I mean, obviously the big picture that they're profiting off selling the baby parts. But was there any moment of it all that is still seared in your memory from what they uncovered?
Oh, yeah, their senior medical officer, their executive, Deborah Nucatola, who was, eating her salad and drinking her wine and talking about how she would change the way that she would abort, that she would kill the unborn child so that she could preserve those wanted body parts. And just how callously she would just say it over, it was over lunch with the undercover investigators. And it even drew Cecile Richards, the president at that time, to apologize for the tone of her senior medical officer. The tone, I mean, you're talking about, just killing human beings and just changing. Well, we want to preserve those precious body parts, not the precious human being, but the body parts. That for me stuck out the most. And this is I think the DNA of Planned Parenthood. They don't even realize how, because they're so in it. They're so desensitized to the inhumanity of it all. So when something like the Center for Medical Progress comes out and exposes this, which remember, child labor laws, those were all exposed, and the abuse of children early in the 20th century was exposed through undercover investigation. This is what sheds light on so much of the seedy part of America, these industries that get away with the exploitation of human beings. And so I praise them, but that really stuck out to me the most.
Yeah. No one ever goes after PETA for doing undercover videos, or who's the To Catch a Predator guy? Oh, come on, what's his name? Oh, geez, what, you know what I mean? It'll hit me in a second. But no one ever goes after him, right? Like, oh, whoa, man, come on, you can't be doing sting operations like this. That's illegal. Right. But she went after him. Sorry, one quick point on the things that stood out to me. I remember there was one scene where they were talking about, I used the word crush the skull, and there was one woman who went into whatever room where they had the body parts, and like you could see the fetus like in full, like it was like clear, and they were like separating the parts and all that stuff. It's like, man, and no one, we just pretend that we pretend that doesn't exist, and I'm so grateful that he exposed it. Anyway, Kamala Harris not grateful that he exposed it. So what did she do in response?
Well, she is one of the most radical pro-abortion senators that America has today. She won't even vote to allow children who were born alive after an abortion, a botched abortion, to be saved and treated as human beings. So she's radical. She also received, what, $81,000 over the course of, I think, from 2010 to 2015 from Planned Parenthood. So here she's the attorney general who's supposed to be, I guess, somewhat neutral. She's supposed to apply the law. But when you're funded by Planned Parenthood, of course, you're going to side with them. And so instead of actually furthering the investigation and looking into the allegations that the Center for Medical Progress revealed, she then attacks David Daleiden. And in fact, she conspired with Planned Parenthood, which was exposed in the email trail between her office, between Kamala Harris, AG Kamala Harris at that time, and Planned Parenthood. And so then she raided David Daleiden's home. And they took all of the footage, the full footage. By the way, the Center for Medical Progress revealed all the footage online. So people would accuse them. Remember, we talked about the highly edited. Well, they also provided the raw footage, too, so people could actually see the entire thing and realize that nothing was taken out of context. But anyway, Kamala Harris had that all seized. And so instead of actually abiding by the law and being the state's highest, enforcer of the law, she really broke the law by raiding his home and violating his constitutional rights. And so this is what happens. This is what happens when Planned Parenthood is so intricately involved in funding these radical pro-abortion politicians who will disregard the law at every turn.
Yeah, imagine how good it must feel if you're Planned Parenthood to know that you have the top cop in your pocket, and you could do anything, anything. Because what would be worse? Like what do you think it would be that Planned Parenthood would have to do for Kamala Harris to be like, all right, guys, whoa, I'm going to have to arrest you now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing they could do. They knew that they could do whatever they wanted. Amazing. Chris Hansen, by the way, was the guy who I was thinking of on To Catch a Predator. You mentioned these emails. Tell us about these emails back and forth between Planned Parenthood and Kamala's office.
Well, in the emails, they're basically talking about not only trying to shut down David Daleiden and to really just shut down that effort in exposing Planned Parenthood and holding him accountable and criminal, I guess, because of, the forged ID. Well, it's undercover journalism. You're not going to go in with your real name. But then there was also the conspiracy to develop legislation to then make it illegal to record conversations with healthcare providers. And of course, California passed that particular piece of legislation so that they could protect. Of course, when you have supermajority, Democrat supermajorities, you can do whatever you want on the left side of things. And so they passed this law to actually make it illegal. It wasn't to protect actual healthcare facilities like hospitals. It was only to protect Planned Parenthood. So that's revealed in those emails between Kamala Harris and Planned Parenthood. I mean, it's so blatant. And then it was continued, of course, with Becerra.
Oh, sorry, what's that? Continue on, sorry.
Well, and then that effort, of course, with the suppression and the lawsuit against David Daleiden continued with AG Becerra, who just continued Kamala Harris's work. But the emails between them is just, it's such a blatant abuse of power, a blatant disregard of the law.
Yeah, it's back and forth. It's like, hey, what do you think of this draft? Oh, how about you change these words here? Okay. And then that's the law. It's like, it could not be more clear that this is the shadiness that was going on behind the scenes. Yeah, so that's it about that. I just want to talk, I mean, do you have any other thought? One more question about Kamala. I'll leave it to you, and then I want to talk to you about pro-life in general, because I know this is one of your passions, and I'm grateful for you doing it. But any other last thoughts, Kamala and Planned Parenthood in general?
You know, she's priding herself on Twitter about how much she supports Planned Parenthood and how she's so proud to be running as the vice president of the Democratic Party. And I'm thinking, well, if Planned Parenthood had its hands on you, literally, you wouldn't be able to have this opportunity. You're only able to do this because you weren't aborted. So it's so bizarre to me when those who so passionately support and take pride in abortion are the ones who escaped the violence of abortion. So here she is, Kamala Harris, someone in a community that is hardest hit by abortion, where abortion rates are 5 times higher, where more black babies are aborted than born alive. She's out there, you know, celebrating the leading killer of black lives. It's a bizarre, surreal situation.
Yeah, it is the most surreal of all the things in our country today. It is the most bizarre. We got about 2 minutes, Ryan, as I know this is a passion of yours, as it is mine, and it's the thing you're not supposed to talk about the most, right? Like, I know I'm a radio host first, and Radio 101 is never talk about abortion. And we talk about abortion all the time. And I just want to know what your thought is on what have you learned about speaking out about it all these years? Either what about it or how to do it in a way that's been effective.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, my story is I'm that 1% that's used 100% of the time to justify abortion. So I was conceived and raped. I'm that fringe example, which is why my wife Bethany and I, are out there passionately defending the most marginalized, the most vulnerable, the most defenseless, because people still tell me, even in college campuses, when I speak in various college campuses, I still have even professors who will say, well, someone like me should have been aborted. Well, that's one of the things that I have learned, that there is so much arrogance and condescension from human beings who've had no control of the circumstances of their conception. None of us do. If you did, that would be a bizarre and weird thing. But none of us have that control. And I find that there's so little knowledge of actually what's going on with the abortion industry. There's so few who know anything about Planned Parenthood. And that's why we are just so passionate about illuminating not only the history of Planned Parenthood, the history of eugenics, but talking about the present impact on all Americans, the impact on women, the impact on men, of course, the impact on the child born and unborn. But there's really such a lack of awareness of what truly is going on and the exploitation and the destruction by the abortion industry.
Man, Brian, I'm so grateful that you share your story, man, because you're right. That's the first thing that people go to. Very first thing. Wow, what about rape?
Right. Exactly.
And as opposed to the vast majority. Yeah. What does your mom say about that and that the experience of being pregnant out of that moment and the pain of that experience?
Well, I never met my birth mom, but I'm glad that my birth mom not only chose the incredible gift of life for me, but she gave me the incredible gift of adoption. I grew up in a family of 15. Wow. I have 6 brothers, 6 sisters, 10 of us were adopted. And so the fact that she was stronger than her circumstances speaks volumes. It literally will have reverberations for generations. And so I meet a lot of rape survivors who, like my mom, chose to be stronger than their circumstances. And so I kind of hear my birth mom through their voices and through their strength, that they faced incredible odds. They faced the horror and the violence of rape, yet chose something that elevated life and chose to protect the only redemptive part of such a horrific act, protecting the child.
Yeah. What would you say to your mom if you got to meet her?
I know these 2 words. Thank you just seems so insufficient. I mean, as a creative, I've written a song for her called Meant to Be. I also created this video called Life is Purpose, but I don't know. I'd probably cry my eyes out and just hug her and just thank her for giving me life.
Yeah, me too. I'd cry my eyes out watching it. Ryan, we got to run. Can you come back another time and we'll spend some more time on your story and your message? I'd love to do that.
Anytime.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you, man. TheRadianceFoundation.org. And Ryan is the co-founder and chief creative officer, TheRadianceFoundation.org, and it's Ryan Baumberger. Ryan, you're the man. Thanks, brother.
Thanks.
Great stuff. Let's do we'll do a recap. We'll just do a hodgepodge in the few minutes we have remaining of Kamala. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Hey, Slater Crusaders, welcome back to our special Exposed the Real Kamala Harris. So we've talked with Leo Terrell about Kamala Harris's truancy laws when she was the district attorney back in San Francisco. We just talked about Kamala with Planned Parenthood and what she did there when she was attorney general. I want to talk with Jennifer Van Laar. She's the deputy managing editor of Red State to kind of put all this together and do a flurry of some other things that she did as attorney general because time is limited. Jennifer, how are you today?
Wonderful. How are you?
Good to talk to you. So let's roll through some things because this is, I mean, I don't know, a senator, I guess we can look at some stuff, but I'd rather know how she's acting how she acted in an executive role. And she was the top cop and head of the California Department of Justice. So it's a pretty big job and pretty big deal. So she did some things there. So you wrote a great article for Red State, obviously. So do you mind if we just run through it here? Tell us what she did with prison labor.
So when she was attorney general, there was a case that was before the Supreme Court because we had a lot of prison overcrowding in California. And the conditions were so terrible that the Supreme Court ruled that it was cruel and unusual punishment for these people to be imprisoned in the way they were. So as AG, she fought against letting some of those prisoners out that were low-level, nonviolent offenders that were eligible for parole, kind of speeding that up a little. She wanted that to keep them because they were using them for cheap labor. They were, some of them making as little as 8 cents an hour, working as janitors, cooks, and on the fire lines.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing for non-Californians to know is we use our prisoners to work the fire lines during our wildfires and pay them very little. Yeah, okay. So she wanted cheap prison labor. Give us her background with the Catholic priest pedophiles. What was her role there?
So in the San Francisco Archdiocese, there was some pretty terrible guys there that were abusing little boys. And Kamala, when she was district attorney in San Francisco, she fought releasing some of the records after all the court cases were taken care of and there wasn't anything pending. They wanted to release them and have people's names blacked out, the victims' names blacked out, and she was against that. Now, the theory is because a lot of the people who donated to her campaigns went to church there in that archdiocese and were affiliated with a Catholic school there. They didn't want everything exposed. One of these priests was then defending other priests in lawsuits about that. And people should know that this is going on, that they have these pedophiles in their church and then same pedophiles defending other pedophiles.
Wait a second. Okay, so the court cases were done. And was that stuff not public? Like who or like what churches were involved yet? That wasn't known by people?
Those were known, but not all what sorry, not Catholic, but not what priests were involved. So they didn't have all the names of who those were. And some of those people were still in contact with children.
Really? So what? So she didn't want to know because she didn't want it to look bad for some of her donors.
Partly that, and partly because her predecessor had wanted to release the records, and it was just kind of a spiteful getting back at her predecessor.
Geez. Let's talk. I know we just talked a little bit about it, but I want your take on the Planned Parenthood thing and what she did against the Center for Medical Progress.
Well, she obviously politically targeted them. Planned Parenthood is a huge donor to Kamala. They had meetings with her shortly before this pre-dawn raid at his home, where they took his own personal property in addition to things relating to his investigation. She's used the California Department of Justice as her own thug squad to go and intimidate political enemies.
Yeah, like the other stories, I could imagine her or her spokespeople kind of spinning it and flipping it and being like, oh no, this is why we didn't release the records. And like I get like plausible, like, right. This one totally out of control. I know we spent a lot of time talking about it in the last segment, but like this one's so blatant and there's no justification for this one whatsoever.
None at all. I mean, they were selling baby parts too. I mean, let the information out and let the people decide something. Then to go prosecute him instead of Planned Parenthood, it's stunning.
Do nothing with Planned Parenthood and then pass a law that benefits Planned Parenthood in the future to prevent it from happening again. Pretty wild. Tell me what happened inside of her office when it comes to sexual harassment claims.
She basically had a culture of allowing this to happen, a good old boy network that she protected, which is totally disgusting as a woman. Her top lieutenant is what I would call him. He'd been with her since she was an assistant district attorney. He was an Oakland police officer, and he had his assistant getting down. He placed the printer under his desk and had her get down on her knees in front of him to change toner or paper so he could just watch her do that with other men in the office. They ended up settling for $400,000 with this woman, and Kamala claimed that she didn't know anything about anything that was happening. So she's either a terrible manager and doesn't understand what's happening in her office, or she just doesn't care. And this man now works for the DA that's prosecuting the couple that painted over the Black Lives Matter.
Oh, really? He's still there?
Street. Yeah, he's now working for that DA.
I think you're, oh no, you got a few more here. What she's done to protect illegal immigrants in California.
Well, she's done the same thing all the rest of them have. She was totally for the sanctuary state law that Kevin De Leon had passed when he was in the state Senate. And she just, as DA is where she started it out. They wouldn't impound cars. Like, say a drunk driver was an illegal alien and he got pulled over, and normally you would impound someone's car when they do that. They wouldn't do that for the illegals. So a friend of mine had his son was killed by one of these illegal aliens who kept his car. A few months later, then ran over my friend's son.
Really? So that was explicit policy from, was it from Kamala or San Francisco in general?
San Francisco in general, but she was the DA, so she was one of the main architects of it. And then once this man killed my friend's son, they didn't even prosecute him for a felony in any way. They prosecuted him for a misdemeanor, and he got 45 days.
You're saying if he was if he was a citizen, then he would have had his car impounded and wouldn't have had a car, presumably, to do that.
Right. And he probably would have been prosecuted for murder, for running over somebody if he did it.
Sure. What's the ideology that Kamala Harris has when it comes to illegal immigration?
The same that the rest of the Dem Party has, but she's been able to actually enforce it, and we've been able to see what that leads to. She's an America Last candidate.
Amazing. What do we need to know? So, like, you and I were both in California, so we have a little background of Kamala. I mean, I think we got a pretty good taste here, right, of something. What does someone around the country need to know about her? Because she'll probably, if Biden wins, she'll be president. It's pretty wild, right? So based on all this information, what do you think she would do as president?
She will ruthlessly go after political enemies. I mean, if we thought it was bad with Obama weaponizing the IRS, just wait until Kamala had any charge of that. In California, she forced nonprofits that maybe had a little bit of conservative bent to try to disclose all of their donors' name and all of their information. That way they can be targeted.
What about her Second Amendment stance?
Her Second Amendment stance is guns for me and my thug squad and not for you. She was chief architect of the assault weapon ban and of getting that tightened up and enforced. She worked with Gavin Newsom on Prop 63 so that we would have to have ammunition background checks. I think other people in other areas of the country don't realize just how terrible it is here of trying to defend yourself.
So when I hear this, I've already tried to put it down just with our whole special day. I'd say we talked to David Arsani the other day, and he used the word authoritarian. That's kind of like, just like her bent, right? Is that fair? Right? That's just sort of like her natural bent of power. I mean, obviously I mean that negatively, but I don't think he meant that like obviously it's not a good thing, but he wasn't trying to be like a jerk, right? He wasn't like, oh, she's a crazy authoritarian. He's like, no, that's just kind of her like personal leanings of power, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it is her personal leaning, and she uses it as a way to enforce everything to the maximum extent possible. I would say authoritarian in all capital letters.
Yeah, so authoritarian, and then policy-wise, it would be Green New Deal, so she's all in on that.
I don't think she really cares that much about that. I think that's just, she go along with that as a Dem.
Okay, very good. Okay, good. Okay, so she would go along with it, no doubt. She's not against
Right.
it. We'll leave it there.
Right.
Anti-Second Amendment, pro-immigration, and then certainly pro-abortion. Those are kind of the top three.
Absolutely pro-abortion.
Yeah.
I think she cares a lot more about that than she does the Green New Deal.
Is she further left than Joe Biden?
Very much. Well, who knows what Joe Biden is anymore, though? I mean, I don't know that he has a thought in his head.
Yeah. Jennifer Van Laar, Red State. You can read all these and all the links and everything, all the detail on Red State. In honor of Kamala Harris's VP nomination, a wrap-up of her terribleness. And there's all the rundown there. You can check it out on redstate.com. Jennifer, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So there you go. There's your potential VP. But if she wins, then, or Biden wins, then she'll be president. I think everyone knows that. Goodness, you know what to do. Mike Slater on our special Exposed, the real Kamala Harris. Spread the word.